The group upstairs, the group is sitting upstairs. Great. Who's presenting from you guys?
I don't have to go anywhere. Nice.
Go ahead, take it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Skylar Earl. I'm, among other things, a free software developer and activist. I have had the pleasure of working with the innovations team here at the UNICEF Department of Communications. I want to say, actually, this was a really great activity. I got the opportunity to meet a whole bunch of people who are interested in similar things that I've been working, like things that are very similar to what I've been working on for a while. So it was a great group of people. We really spent all of our time just kind of getting our heads around sort of the broad issues of community mapping. Because even coming up with a definition of what community mapping is seems a bit sort of elusive. Largely, so I have a bunch of cards here that are sort of in more or less random order. This card says, putting cartography in the hands of lay people, which I guess is one way of looking at community mapping. Broadly speaking, I think I heard sort of three functions of it. One is, overall, we want to get people to create their own information, to collect their own information, to create their own narratives, because after all, maps are, if nothing else, a narrative medium, a storytelling medium. And there are sort of three different kinds of stories that can be told about places, about communities, and about particularly disadvantaged communities. There's the sort of macro level of information, the kind where policy is determined, in governments and relief agencies and so on. There's the micro level of, how many kids are showing up to this school every day, and sort of what does it mean when they stop showing up? And then there's the sort of the personal level of how can we leverage maps and geography as a way of giving people the opportunity to tell their own personal narratives. And to get those narratives out into the world. And then I would say, fourthly, even we have the general problem of access to geographic information. And this is sort of the question of base maps. Where are the base maps for people's narratives coming from? Where's the raw data for that coming from? There's the OpenStreetMap project, for example, which is a project to create geographic information for the entire world with user-generated content. How do we get information into that? And how do we make awareness that base data is necessary, that it's a public good? How do we make that a part of sort of public policy, both within governments and within the sort of international relief network? Was there anything I forgot? That was basically as far as we got. It was a very exciting discussion, and it seemed that all of us at that table had a sort of slightly different angle and a set of slightly different goals that all sort of cohered at this sort of central point of how do we enable people to use geography. But we didn't really come up with a deliverable because we were only really just getting heated up when the conversation.
Yeah. I would like to add to that. I was in the group. That we also found ourselves that there were two groups within our group. One who were focused. There were kind of two smaller groups within our group, which I perceive. One of which was sort of more focused on these policy questions of open and public geodata and the need for that in different types of humanitarian and development contexts. And then there was another discussion which we were just getting into, which was very interesting, about more subjective forms of mapping and different types of mapping practices that would, say, for instance, allow children or other less advantaged communities within cities who are prevented from systematic access to things like infrastructure and transport and all, to be able to map out geographies of hazard, of safety, of different types of things which have less of a basis in concrete, geographically accurate sort of data than in people's actual perceptions of space and their environment. So we were just getting off to a start on talking about that as well.
Great. Chris, do you want to add something? Miguel? Okay. So the last thing that I just want to add to that is that I was reminded in the midst of our discussion that I met at least one of the participants in our discussion group today at a community mapping workshop at a technical conference almost exactly 5 years ago.
How much progress has been made in those 5 years? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think it's fair to say, 5 years ago, all we had were discussion. But
no question. But I just it's. Sort of. Unprecedented in the history of 5-year development periods. That's great.
It works for me, but I'm a free software developer. It works for me, but I'm a free software developer.
Yeah.
And I think it's not too much to say that in 5 years, it'll work for everybody else.
Right.
But how do we get there? I think that's a good question. And the technology is still maturing, and it's important to recognize that.
Right. So that's great. It reminds me of the old joke. Unix is the Unix operating system is very user-friendly. It's just very particular about which users it's friendly to. It sounds like maybe community mapping is in that state right now.